Hey everyone, welcome back. Icon here. Thanks so much for checking out another episode of Esports Analysis. Today, we are going to go back, and I really wanted to break down this hardpoint matchup between Chicago and New York. So this is one of those matchups. This is one of the first times that they played, and it was just a complete beatdown. And the reason for that, well, there's a couple reasons. We'll get into them in a second, but this isn't anything new for New York anymore, right? If you go back like 4 or 5 weeks, New York really wasn't playing that well. They weren't winning too many of their hard points. They were really just getting blown out of the water. But these days, they had a really strong showing, at least early on in the tournament against Chicago. And then they came back, and we all know what they did against Atlanta. So New York is showing that they're one of the better respawn teams in the game. And today I just wanted to go back and I wanted to point that out. We have the mini map in the bottom left-hand corner, so we can really digest what's going on and analyze how things are being broken and whatnot. So with this, as we get into this, you can see that there are 13 seconds left in P1. We're about to rotate to P2, and this is a really good setup from Chicago. We'll see if they're going to be able to keep it. But as you look at the mini map in the bottom left-hand corner, all of these arrows from Chicago were right here around mid-map, and one thing that I really like is as we're looking at this, unfortunately, he just backtracked a little bit, but I liked when Gunless was up in this area over here because, again, you have control of P2, but the way that you really lock that down and the way that you get a lot of points is by pushing out more towards mid-map, right? If you can get kills, the further and further out that wave becomes, the more points you're able to rack up inside the hill. So I get that Gunless probably sensed that he was overran there, but had he just been able to get at least 1 or 2 kills just by kind of hiding over there, that would have gave his team a much better chance to rack up points inside of P2. And now that he ended up going down and he retreated, now this is going to become a contested hardpoint, right? You have one team spawning on the right, one team spawning on the left. Although, as you're watching the kill feed there, Arcides, Envoy, Formal, they all did a really nice job of stacking up kills there, and they are still getting the majority of these points. So that's a nice hold from Chicago. They didn't really have a ton of success in this series when it came to the respawn game types, but that's a really nice job. That's one where they kind of gave up the left-hand side of the map. It became contested, and then they fought back in order to get the majority of those points. So really nice job out of them there. As we're getting ready to rotate here, the biggest thing that I want to point out is there was just a gun battle that happened right here. And if the kill feed right here, you can see Accuracy got a 2-piece over there towards Woods. And that's massive because now that we're rotating to P3, if P2's over here, what teams are trying to do is they're trying to rotate through Woods. I think that a lot of teams are picking up on this. And then once they get to Woods, they're trying to get back P5. And if they can get back P5, then that can set up spawns for P3 and that can set up spawns for P5. So I think a lot of teams are starting to catch on to that. I think that they're sending more of their ARs over towards Woods because that's a battle, that's a gun battle that would benefit the ARs, obviously. So they're continuing to push over there. You can see Zuma in the kill feed got a 3-piece over towards Beatom, which really kept Chicago pushed back a little bit. And I like this positioning from Temp. Remember, we literally just said not a minute ago that the further out you can get kills, the better, right? Because that just keeps the enemy team further and further away. And that's what you were looking at right there, is that Temp was pushed up into office, and now he's getting kills not just outside of the hill, but on the opposite side. And that's why, look, we've got 16 seconds left in the current hardpoint, and Chicago was just now able to get New York off of it for a little bit. And even so, the last 10 seconds are going to go. So when you're looking at the score here, that was a massive hold for New York, not just because they were able to rack up the score, but also because they were able to hold down spawns for P5. So if they're able to contest a little bit, it looks like right now they're even in position to get time. But if they're able to contest or even tie P4, and then they're able to win P5, that would set them up. They'd probably have like a 70, 80-point lead going into the second set of rotations, but we'll see what happened. The man to look at right here is Arcides, as he's pushed up over to P3, and he's really trying to just hold this down because if he can sneak around back, if he's right here, if he can sneak around back over through P5, then that would give his team spawns, but it doesn't seem like that's what's going to happen as he goes down right there, and that's a really nice hold from New York. New York was able to hold this right here. So now they're pushed up. They're trying to contest P4. And as soon as this pops in the next 8 seconds, they're going to go back into P5 and they're going to have positioning there. So if we're looking overall, this was a really nice job from New York of getting up into P4 and contesting but not losing spawns. And now that they have spawns for P5, this looks really bleak for Chicago, right? They don't have map control. They haven't had map control for the last 2 minutes. They're really trying to flood through boxes, but that's just one tiny little choke point. It's really hard to push through just one choke point like that. As you can see, a couple people go down on the left-hand side. Matt get a 2-piece accuracy. Matt got a 3-piece. Zuma getting kills. If you look at the kill feed on the left-hand side, it is all white with New York Subliners players. So at this point, you do have 25 more seconds, but if you're Chicago, the next thing that you want to do is you don't want to give up spawns for P2. So just to kind of draw this out, you can see right here, Gunless is rotating. But as Gunless is rotating, so is Zuma right here. So whoever is going to end up winning this battle would have a big advantage going to the second set of rotations because they're going to have spawns for P2. So we'll see how this plays out. There's one last push here from a couple of the SMG players, and Formal trying to get inside P5, but accuracy gets a 2-piece, and that's a big hold, right? Because that's at least a 20-point swing. If Zuma goes down right there, or if attached, no, who was it? It was accuracy. Sorry. If accuracy goes down right there, then he gives up the last 10 seconds to Chicago. So those 10 seconds that went towards New York would go towards Chicago, and that's a 20-point swing. So instead of being 140 to 80, it would be 130 to 90, and that would be a much closer game, right? One hill alone can pretty much bring back the deficit of 130 to 90, whereas 140 to 80 is a little bit harder to come back from. What I'm watching right now on the minimap right-hand side, you can see Temp was trying to sneak around. He didn't end up getting through. Zuma is also in showers. So, again, this is another thing that I don't really love. You can see right here in the middle of the map that New York is starting to get pushed up, and they're getting a lot of kills in this area right here. So if you're New York, this is a really nice job because you're preparing yourself to not get a ton of time inside of P2. So the way that you can offset that is by getting a bunch of time inside of P1. If you're able to get 30 points inside of P1, then if Chicago gets 50 points inside of P2, that doesn't hurt you as bad, right? Whereas if you were to get 0 inside of P1 and you were to get and your enemy was going to get 60 inside of P2, then that would hurt your team a lot, right? Because that would be negative 60. But if you're able to get 30 inside of P1 and your enemy gets 50 inside of P2, that's only negative 20. So just as we were saying that, however, New York was able to push through the right-hand side of the map. So not only were they able to get about 30 seconds, 40 seconds inside of P1, but they were also able to flip. Again, you saw the pressure, minimap bottom left-hand corner of your screen. You saw the pressure on the left-hand side. As soon as they got through, they were able to push around, and now they have control of Hardpoint, and they did have somebody on both sides. Now they've kind of given up the right-hand side. That seems like that's where Chicago might mount their comeback. That's where it's coming from, the right-hand side. But as we watch this, I mean, this is just a dominant 2 or 3. Really, if you go back to the first set of rotations, P3, New York controlled. P4, they contested. P5, they controlled. P1, on the second set of rotations, they got the majority of the time, and then they were able to flip for P2. So if you're kind of wondering how this happened, that's the series of events, right? They were just able to hold basically for P3 and P5 on the first set of rotations. They were able to flip for P2 on the second set of rotations, and now we'll see if they're able to do it again. Again, just as we're watching here, remember this is going from P2 over to P3. So for New York, what you want to watch is you want to watch the break on this side of the map. You can see 3 white arrows going this side. You can see the other 2 white arrows going mid-map because they want to try to flip. Rather than funnel through B-Dom right here through these tiny little choke points, they're going to go and try to get through woods and through mid-map and try to flip that way. We'll see if they're successful, but this is just kind of the new norm when it comes to this map because it hasn't always been this way. Maybe the last, I don't know, maybe the last 6 or 7 weeks we've really been seeing this. The first time that I saw this, and I don't want to say that it's Chicago that did it, it's just the first time that I recognized that rotation happening was coming from Envoy. Envoy was the one that was making those plays. And just like that, they were able to push through mid-map, they were able to get into P5, and now the spawns have flipped. So as we're getting back from P3 over towards P4 towards P5, New York has spawns again. And that's pretty bad for Chicago, right? Because at this point in time, they're doing a nice job of holding P3, but P3 is not what you're most worried about. P3, of course, you want to have garage spawns just so that you have spawns for P5 once it gets back there. But the big thing with P3 is that if you're holding from the opposite side, you're not going to be in position when it gets back to P5. And even with that, on the first set of rotations, New York did a really nice job inside of P4. So we'll see if they're able to replicate that now that it's popped. So we just now rotated from P3 to P4, and Chicago was able to flip again. So if you're Chicago, this is kind of a point in time where you could get back into the game, right? You only have 13 seconds to break this hard point. It doesn't look like it's going to happen, and the spawns flip, so now it's definitely over. But had you have been able to get into this hard point and contest a little bit, and you were able to hold spawns, then if you only gave up like 10 seconds inside of there and you were able to get all 60 points inside of P5 as it rotated back, then you'd be looking at like a 230 to 190 ball game. So then you're in striking distance, right? But now that you have spawned out, you don't have spawns, and New York's in the hard point, that's the end of it. So they definitely had their opportunities, right? On the second set of rotations, they had spawns for P2 and they lost them. Just right here, what we just saw, as it rotated from P3 to P4, they had spawns and they lost them. So it's not like they didn't have their opportunities. Had they been able to max out those two hills, add 100 points to their score, and now we've got a ball game, right? So with that, guys, thank you so much for checking out another episode here. If you enjoy this sort of stuff, make sure you hit that subscribe button. I put out new videos like this every single day. If you have any comments whatsoever, put them down below. Make sure you leave a like before you head on your way. It really helps out the channel. And with that, guys, thank you so much. I will catch you in tomorrow's upload.